want them to trust me. I want them to feel relaxed so that they can allow themselves to teach me about themselves. When you're a new guy and you're new to either the UFC or whatever, you kind of got to do what I tell you to at this point. Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts. If you can think better, trust me, when you can coordinate your positioning and you can coordinate what you're doing from a game plan perspective, and it's chess, it's not checkers in there. So at the end of the day, you got to be able to move accordingly. And you can train the mind to do that and not just be a brute. You'll be a better fighter. You'll be a better martial artist. Like I'm for the people. I told them all the time, I'm for the people. So I'm going to put out that free content because I know that it's going to be reciprocated if I do it the right way. I'm just doing me. So I would do this even if I didn't have a camera in front of my face. And that's where you're being authentic in a sense. So if you are that type of person, you're doing yourself and other people around you a disservice by not putting it out there and allowing yourself to reach the masses.
Welcome to this new episode. Before we get started, I'd like to thank our sponsor for the podcast, Moxy Monitor. If you've been following my work, you know that the Moxy is a tool that I use a lot for testing, but also for everyday training and coaching. For those who don't know about the Moxy Monitor yet, it's a NIRS device that measures muscle oxygen saturation and blood volume in real time. It's a non-invasive sensor that is placed on the skin and can be worn during any training or sporting activity. Motocross riders and climbers wear it on their forearms. Hockey players on the ice, swimmers can wear it in water. I've used it to test rugby players, CrossFit athletes, endurance athletes, and more. The Moxy allows you to individualize work and rest periods, optimize load, reps and sets, identify training thresholds in real time, and even correct movement based on what the data shows you. You can also use the Moxy Monitor to determine an athlete's energetic limiting factor and their individual training zones. Using this process, I can now target the athlete's limiter with precision in order to improve their performance without adding unnecessary volume to their program. You can view and collect the data on your Garmin watch and can also pair the Moxy with other physiological testing products such as the VO2 Master, Pnoe, and Cosmed VO2 systems. The Moxy is a product I've been using for many months with great success, and I highly recommend it to any coach who's interested in digging a little bit deeper on the physiological side of health, fitness, or performance. You can use the coupon UPSIDE at checkout for a 5% discount on moxymonitor.com/shop. That's UPSIDE, UPSIDE, for a 5% discount. With that said, let's get into the show. All right, Phil, welcome to the UPSIDE Strength Podcast. How you doing, man?
Thanks for having me, man. I'm good.
It's a pleasure to have you on. For the 2.5 listeners who don't know who you are, could you please give us just a quick overview of who you are and what you do?
Yeah, Phil Daru. I'm a strength coach, special strength coach. Work with a lot of combat sport athletes. Been doing it for about 12 years. I own my own facility. I've worked with athletes such as Dustin Poirier, Joanna Jedrzejczyk, Edson Barbosa, Hector Lombard, a lot of bigger names in the fighting industry. I also work with celebrities and also some actors here and there. But for the main part is, I work with athletes at the highest level all the way down to the high school level. So just well-versed, or trying to be at least.
Yeah, exactly. You have a lot of experience with a lot of different people. I definitely want to start with the time that you've spent coaching MMA athletes so far. So if we start with this, what has been your biggest lesson from your work in the MMA world so far?
The biggest lesson, for me, I've been an athlete all my life. I fought professionally myself. The one thing that I could take away was that understanding individuals from a personality perspective, that was the major thing. Getting into the coaching world with fighters was a lot different, because coming from a background where I used to work with a lot of high school kids, a lot of high school football players, and take that similar coaching style to fighters, and a lot of fighters are self-motivated. They don't actually need that hard-nosed, like fatherly type of motivation, I guess you would say. And so understanding athletes more so than anything, and understanding so many different personalities from so many different walks of life. I was at a gym before where I had to work with upwards to 60 to 80 fighters, all from different backgrounds, all from, different sides of the world. And so that allowed me to understand people more, and also understand communication and how key that was to getting the results that we were looking for.
How do you connect with an athlete when it's the first time you start working with a fighter? What's your approach to building that connection as a coach to try and, like you said, you don't have to be hard with them necessarily, but you definitely have to understand them so you can best serve them. So what's your approach?
Well, I usually just sit them down first and foremost. Like I sit them down, go through a conversation, try to make it as laid back as possible because I want them to trust me. I want them to feel relaxed so that they can allow themselves to teach me about themselves, So we have a full conversation usually about an hour or two before I even get them in the training floor. And this is our initial assessment. Then from there, I'll do something like a Braverman's test where it's a basic true or false test that I get to identify personality traits based off of the neurotransmitter dominance. But that's here or there. Some people like to cheat the test, I found. So I use it with a grain of salt. And for the most part, I like to just sit them down and see exactly what's their why, where they come from, what motivates them individually, how they like to be coached. Good or bad, past experiences with other coaches, whether good or bad. And then from there, I can understand, okay, this type of person likes to be coached this way, or this type of person likes to be motivated in such a way. We got guys that are new to the sport, or you got, younger athletes that need to be treated such. And then you got the older veterans that I treat in different ways. So really just depends. But the first initial conversation is all about, developing a trust and an understanding of what's going to happen inside the training world, as far as programming, as far as, planning and everything else, but also getting them to know me and I know them. So that's really a big thing when it comes down to setting a baseline of understanding to go forward.
You said you asked them how they like to be coached. How do you draw the line between doing the things that they like because they like them and just getting them to do the things that they need to do, even if it's maybe the things that they like doing the least?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I get this question a lot. So I do give them what they want at most of the times, especially if they are veterans. You got a guy like Dustin Poirier, where I've known him now for roughly 6 or 7 years. We had 11 fight camps, so I know that no matter what, he's still going to go out there and perform, so there's, in some ways, he's earned the fact to do some things that he likes to do. Right. And again, those do help him in the fight. So I'm not really totally against it. But there are some things that he hates to do that I have to put him through it. And then from there, you have to kind of reiterate the fact that this is, I know you don't like to do this, but we have to do this. And we have a little bit of back and forth. It's kind of funny to watch, but the goal is, one, we have to get him better, and he understands there's some gaps that need to be filled. And so for that, he takes it. He doesn't like it, but he'll take it and he'll run with it. And that's the same thing that goes when you're a new guy and you're new to either the UFC or whatever. You kind of got to do what I tell you to do at this point. Like there's no ifs, ands, or buts, but we still like to make sure that they enjoy the process. So I'm going to give them stuff that I know that they are, good at in a way, because again, if you're good at it, you like it, right? If you probably hate it. So I give them that, make it interesting, switch it up a little bit. Obviously I run a conjugate approach. So there's a lot of switching and variations going on. So it doesn't allow them to get stale, doesn't allow the workouts to be boring and monotonous. But there is some things that need to be hit on continuously, obviously, to gain an adaptation. But for the most part, I like to keep, and for myself too, and my coaches that are with me, we want to keep it interesting for ourselves. We're in and out all day long with fighters and athletes. So it's good to change it up for our sake, just to be like, oh, let's try this out today. Let's try this out. As long as it fits the parameters of what we're trying to accomplish from an adaptation standpoint.
I want to go back to the conversation that you have with your athletes before you start even training them. Are there one or two key questions that stand out for you as being, maybe if you had to pick one or two questions out of everything that you go through, what would they be and why?
Well, most of them will ask, why are we doing this? Why is this going to help me in a fight? And, these guys, they're fighters at heart, even the athletes. And this is the thing, like with fighting, it's so different because it's primal, right? Everybody knows deep down how to throw a punch. Even if they don't really throw a technical punch, they still will try to fight somebody, right? So for the most part, you get fighters that come from backgrounds of non-athletics. So these guys have never been in the weight room. They've probably never been a part of a team. So those are the more challenging stories, I guess you would say, the more challenging aspects of what I have to do. When it comes to like athletes that go into the sport just because, well, I'm athletic and let's say they were wrestlers or something like that in the Division I level, they're more understanding of why we're doing stuff inside the weight room. So reframing is a key contributor to what we do. And I'm very good at that. I would say that's one of my strong suit. Two things really. It's coming up with auto-regulation or strategy that fit the mold in real time, especially if you have an injury or something like that. I've been able to like perfect that in a ways because of, again, constant practice, you know. And then, like I said, is reframing and being able to make sure they understand the real true reason why we're doing it and have that dynamic correspondence over to the sport. And in a lot of ways, you know, what we do, we're not trying to mimic what's in the cage or in the ring, but we still want to work on the biomechanics. We still want to work on the specific bioenergetic demands. And if I can communicate that over appropriately to the athlete, they'll be more apt to doing what I tell them to do. The good thing that also comes with it is that I fought before, so they know that I've been in their position. They know that I understand the sport from that perspective. And so that helps create what we call buy-in, right? So quote unquote buy-in. But it's also trust. It's trust in, okay, I'm not just giving you something to give you just for the sake of doing it. It's actually going to help you, because in the sport of MMA and combat sports and any real sport, you know, we have limited time to do stuff. So everything we do has to make sense. There should be no wasted effort, no wasted time. And that's why, you know, the exercises that I select have to make sense for the athlete, mentally understanding it, and also from a physiological perspective, from a biomechanics perspective.
Next question is as two sides to it. What, in your opinion, are the most underappreciated aspects of strength and conditioning for MMA athletes? One, from the public's eye view, and two, from the fighter's standpoint.
Okay, so from the fighter's standpoint, it's confidence in a lot of ways, you know, and it's probably an unorthodox answer, but it's definitely confidence, because they know that, you know, if we put more weight on the bar, if they increase their numbers, if they feel stronger inside of practice, that gives them more confidence to go inside the cage or the ring and to do what they've been taught to do from a technical standpoint. So it gives them confidence for the most part. You know, from the outside looking in, you know, we do it's not just about lifting weights. It's not just about running, you know, it's everything. It's mobility, you know, it's cognitive work, you know, proprioception, balance, coordination, you know, all that stuff comes into play when you get underneath the bar or when we're doing certain drills. You know, obviously you're going to work explosive power, you're going to work your endurance work. But for the most part, we're trying to get them to be a better athlete, and that's going to correlate over into being a better fighter or whatever they're doing inside their sport. So things I would say, I love the confidence factor, because I know for a fact, just being in there myself, that if you're not confident in your physicality and you're not confident in your approach and in the way being able to prepare for a fight, it's definitely going to be detrimental when you go and try to implement your game plan inside the fight. So it's 90% mental. I know a lot of people say that, but I honestly believe it. It's at the higher percent range when you start and you get into the cage or you step into the ring, because everything else from a preparation standpoint is done. Now it's time to showcase what you've been working on. And if you're not confident in the approach and what you've done beforehand, you're not going to be apt to taking those risks or those challenges head on.
If we talk now about maybe the more, I'm not going to say beginner, but less experienced MMA fighters that you've worked with, what physical quality that do you work with them that they're the most surprised about? You know, maybe like you mentioned all the different aspects that you take a very holistic approach to your coaching. Is there one aspect that maybe most younger athletes will say to you, well, why are we doing this? I don't need this for my performance in the cage.
Yeah, I do a lot of stuff with with one of my boys. I actually played high school football with him, but his name's Mr. Mental Muscle on Instagram. And we do what's called, and I dubbed this name because I was like, man, we got to call it something, but it's basically cognitive work. So we do cognitive conditioning. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times people see it with like the fit lights where they're hitting the lights and things like that, but there's a lot more that goes into it. And I mean, he could definitely tell you a little bit more about that, but I think that that's a true X factor because it allows us to still work the brain. It still works agility. It still works timing, reaction, all that stuff. But it's not beating up the body. So it's a good substitute for sparring. It's a good substitute for any type of like physical training. But it still gives you that aspect of, okay, I need to be reactive. I need to make sure that I have optimal decision making, and we can put it as specific as possible. And we've been doing that with Dustin since the Anthony Pettis fight. And he's just been, as far as the athletes go, he's obviously the top of the top when it comes down to like understanding it and having the results showcased. But yeah, those are one thing that the young kids are like, what is this, man? Why am I putting numbers down? Like, it's like math. Like they're doing math questions and answers. And I'm like, listen, it's just because of the fact that like, if you can think better, trust me, when you can coordinate your positioning and you can coordinate what you're doing from a game plan perspective, and it's chess, it's not checkers in there. So at the end of the day, you got to be able to move accordingly. And if you can train the mind to do that and not just be a brute, you'll be a better fighter. You'll be a better martial artist. So I think that's one thing. Another thing is we really work on mobility. And I use a lot of FRC, so functional range conditioning. And they're like, man, what is this? And they hate it, but they like it at the same time because it's certainly challenging. But it doesn't look like much. If you like it from the outside in, you're like, oh man, he's just like kind of moving his hip and moving his arm. And it's like, is that really challenging? But it is if you don't have the optimal range of motion. And then if you do, we put you in even harder positions so that you can get active control in those end ranges. And so for that, you're basically doing isometric contractions in those end ranges. And that's very hard to do because you're in that peak contraction phase in everything you're doing. So you're trying to gain some more range because we want the joints to be optimal. We want to be able to move joints like true joints. We want to be able to produce force from every position and every angle. And if you can't do that, you have flexibility. I would say mobility is way more efficient than flexibility. Flexibility is good, but you also want to have control in those end ranges. And if you don't have those controls, well, especially in a sport like jiu-jitsu or something like that, if you get stacked in a position, yeah, you can probably get your feet over your head and stay there, but can you have the stability and the strength to not get passed after you get stacked? So that goes into play too as well. But those are some things that I tell the guys to make them understand of why we're actually doing this. And then once they see it, it's almost like a party trick in a sense, because you see a quick adaptation right then and there. And obviously we have to make sure it sticks, but I like it because you can see a drastic change directly right after the fact. So, but yeah, those are the two.
If we zoom out a little bit now, what's the biggest challenge for you as a strength conditioning coach in MMA? What are the biggest constraints that you have to deal with in your programming and the execution of the different sessions as a one piece in a big puzzle with a big staff and team around those athletes?
Yeah. Well, when I first started, it was just me, and it was me with 8 to 10 guys, all fighting at the highest level. Most of them were like UFC top 10. So like I definitely had to make sure I was on point with everything. And I ran through a bunch of different schemes, a bunch of different methods of training and programming outlines and periodization schemes. And I found that I've always done conjugate pretty consistently throughout my entire career. I'm a lifter too as well. So I've done powerlifting. I've done bodybuilding at some points, believe it or not. Football, college football, so I've done it all, but we were doing block periodization for a while, and we were doing things like, we were doing daily undulation. We were doing, we were just messing around with a lot of stuff, or at least I was. And what I found was that guys don't know when they're fighting. So most of the time, take fights on short notice. Even if they're in the UFC, if they're coming up, they're going to take a fight at any point. And even at the highest level, the only one that I could say that I know for a fact of when he's going to fight is Dustin Poirier or, you know, Joanna Jedrzejczyk or somebody high up that can dictate the contracts. Other guys, they have to go with whatever, you know, Dana or whoever motor tells them, right? And that goes for boxing too as well. So because I work with a lot of boxers and I also work with a lot of judokas. And judokas, they go to tournaments every month, if not every or 2 times a month. So with all that being said, I had to make sure that they were constantly ready. So working in a concurrent approach and conjugating it to where they were able to be ready at all times was important. That also helped me with auto-regulation. That also helped me with, you know, being able to put people in the right positions and the right exercises based on the methods that were trying to be attained, right? In a large group setting. So if I had a Junior Dos Santos who's a heavyweight and I had a Tecia Torres who's obviously a strawweight, you know, and they were both training in the same like group, I could still give them exactly what they needed from a methods perspective. I would change the modality based on, you know, the biomechanics or whatever they were able to do or their game plan. And I was still able to keep a good eye on them, you know? So it was that. Now I have a team, I have a staff. So, you know, I have my guys take a certain group over here and a certain group over here. We still run a condensed version of conjugate where like I basically came up with a method of training to where I took the 4-day split and turned it into 2 days. Because a lot of times we didn't have 3 to 4 days to work with athletes. You know, they had all the other demands that they have to do, especially in MMA. And so for that, I condensed it to 2 days. And what we did was we worked on dynamic effort and max effort, but we split it up into quadrants of the body. And again, we found tremendous results with it. You know, intuitively, I knew that it would work. I didn't have any real data to prove it. Now we do, especially with over 900 coaches from around the world that use it too as well on their athletes. But I mean, the most challenging part was auto-regulation. Was all right, manipulating. Okay, we have this guy over here that has an ankle injury, but he still has to train. We have this girl over here that has a hand injury, but she still has to work her speed and still has, you know. So there's things that we always had to work around, and it's still to this day. It's constant understanding schedules of different training. Now that I'm not inside of an MMA gym, I'm working with multiple different camps, or my coaches are working with multiple camps. So all their schedules are all, you know. So if we have a one gym like Sanford MMA, we have those guys come in. I know their particular schedule, right, of class schedules. And you have, let's say, American Top Team or, you know, Charles McCarthy's gym that's next to us in our same vicinity. You know, we have those guys set accordingly to where their schedules is. Because again, it's all going to depict upon their skills training. So if they're wrestling hard that day, you know, we may have to go ahead and taper them off because that's going to be an overload. And then we also want to make sure that we're managing their fatigue accordingly. So the 3 main things would be being able to auto-regulate, scheduling accordingly, and then also making sure that you give them the right exercises based upon the methods that we're training. So those are 3.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. If we zoom out now on your general approach as a coach and business owner now, who have been your biggest influences over the years?
Well, I mean, influences on a coaching perspective has got to be Louis Simmons. Obviously, I'm wearing Westside Barbell shirt, but Louis has been a big influence on me. Joe DeFranco is another one. The good thing about it, man, is like I've been watching these guys all my life, and I've been able to reach a level of I don't know, of success, you would say, that I'm able to like be able to converse with them on a daily basis. Like DeFranco's actually coming out to the conference that I'm holding in December. So, and we talk on a daily basis, and it's cool that I can be able to reach out. Louis just sent me a signed book, and then he gave me his number and everything. So that's cool that, you know, you reach that level where you can actually converse with the guys that you've been looking up to. As far as like business wise, you know, I've been able to look at, and I've been able to work with guys like Timbaland, who's a record producer. I'm actually at his house right now. But him, how he looks at like business and how he looks at understanding the culture. And for that, I really take that in effect. Like I don't take it for granted. Every day I'm in there picking his brain. You know, he's actually knocked out right now because we've been training for like 7 days straight. And you know, other guys in the industry, like I don't have a one-on-one conversation with them, but watching them on certain things and seeing how, you know, and business is different for me, man. Business is, it's obviously I work as, you know, it's more of it's almost a social environment because it's a gym, you know? And so I'm providing a service, and I'm not the salesy guy, you know, but at the end of the day, I know my worth. So I have to understand that. And that's what I've been really, you know, digging into, is understanding that. And then financial literacy is key for me, man, because you don't have that at all. Like, you know, it's to create generational wealth.
Mm-hmm.
And my son, daughters, if they don't understand how to manage their money appropriately, that I'm doing a disservice to them as a father. So I have to learn it myself before I can teach others. And that's what, you know, I've really been hitting on now, being a business owner. You know, I had businesses in the past. I've owned my own gym at the age of 22, and didn't know anything about business. I was just really good at doing what I do, you know, and ended up growing exponentially, but without any understanding of business. Like, I don't even think I had like a full business. I don't even think I had a business bank account. I was just putting money in shoe boxes at that point. But yeah, it's embarrassing. But you know, now, you know, we've progressed, you know, thankfully, and I have an assistant. Talk to Maureen, you know, as my assistant, and fortunately, you know, they're all ex-fighters too as well. Like, Maureen's a 2-time world champion. She's done, you know, so it's
That's
like
amazing.
It's cool good to have sometimes, but yeah, and for me, it's non-stopping. Like, we're definitely going to franchise the gym. Looking forward to that. And you know, the online stuff, the programs that I have online, the mentorship is big right now. I'm excited, you know, because we have roughly around 920 coaches from around the world that I've been able to create a community where it's not just teaching them, it's them teaching themselves. They're conversing with each other in a big chat group, and you can see like everybody's willing to help each other, which is something that I've always loved to build. I love to build a culture. I love to build a community. And so that's like really my passion as of right now. Obviously, I have my athletes still that I'm working with, but I'm more so working on coaching coaches. And that's a big thing.
Over the last, let's say, couple of years, what are the biggest things that you've changed your mind about?
Yeah. There's a lot of things, man. Like, as far as coaching goes,
whether it's coaching, whether it's business, whether it's your own outlook on certain, you know, methods, approaches, systems.
I would say methods wise, you know, I've always been a man, like, I've never been stuck in absolutes, you know, and there was a point of where I was only doing this or I was only doing that. And I felt like that was the only way to do it. But, you know, seeing so many different people and training so many different walks of life, I found that, man, I'd say kind of like a Bruce Lee approach, and take what works, take away what doesn't. And so I've been able to really understand that and streamline it to the athletes that I'm working with, to the situations that I have, you know, and that goes for business too as well. Like, I've noticed that, like, trying to do everything all at once is another thing that I fail miserably at, you know, and I think most people do. You know, at the end of the day, if you're looking to achieve a goal, you have to stay focused on that goal. And I was able to streamline that in a practice, you know, like whether it be competing myself, whether it be, you know, now I'm getting ready for a triathlon, where that's totally the opposite of what I've been doing all my life, you know, or, you know, getting ready for a particular program that I was putting out. I tried to stay focused on that before it goes out, and then make sure that it goes the way it's planned. And once it's fulfilled and once it's accomplished, then I go to the next thing. But what I have done in the past, and even with my own career, was I was trying to do too many things, because I'm like, I don't know, like, I ADD in a sense, where I have to do so much at once. And I found like that doesn't work for me. So, you know, taking my time, staying focused on the task, and then completing that task, and then moving on to the next one, making sure that that's successful, and then moving on to the next one. There's one thing that I could say, I could tell my younger self, you know, stay the course and make sure that you're focused on that one thing, and then you can move to the next.
Yeah, because if you operate like that, you can get so much done over, you know, a year, 2 years, 3 years, maybe you won't see the fruits of that labor for that long. And because if you only look over a week or 2 weeks, it looks like you quote unquote didn't do anything, but because you're all over the place, it just gets worse and worse. Where if you really build on one thing, like you said, and then move to the next, you can have some continuity, and things gain momentum as you build them and as you work through them, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. Like when I was fighting, you know, I opened up my gym, and I was like, all right, well, I was just gonna do this as a side gig, but it ended up blowing up. So I'm like, oh, well, now I have to put my focus into this, but I also have still a pro fighter. So like, I lost like first few of my fights because I wasn't even focused on training. I was focused on building and training other people. And so for that, I was like, damn, which one do I do? And I was trying to bounce back and forth, and either one thing was gonna deteriorate. So, you know, I ended up finding out what was my true calling, and then I went the coaching route, went the business route, and now here we are. But yeah, it was a certain amount of time there, and I catch myself too, and I gotta be like, and my wife even says it. She's like, you're starting to do too much again. You're starting to do too much again. I'm like, you're right. All right, let me back off. Let me find out what's important. You know, even like Tim says it too, man. Like, I was about to go into like, you know, all right, we're gonna run this gym, and then I'm gonna open up this gym, and I'm gonna start doing all these gyms. He's like, man, just do what you're doing right now and let it grow. We can work on it afterward. Everything's settled. So yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I want to talk about your podcast for a couple minutes. What is it about podcasting that attracted you in the first place? And today, what do you enjoy about it the most?
Man, I'm kind of selfish, man. Like, you know, you got me on the podcast here, and I'm gonna have you on mine because I like to talk. I want to, you know what I mean? Like, everybody's been asking me questions. I'm like, you know what? It's time for me to ask some questions. You know, that was really what it was. Like, I was like, man, I just want to have conversations with people I like to talk to, you know, and put it out there. Because I know that I've been in conversations. I was like, man, if everybody heard what we were talking about right now, they'd get so much value out of it. And so I'm like, I can't be selfish in that way. You know, as long as I do, I'll be able to share the love. But like, I'm going to ask the questions because I don't get to really do that a lot when I'm, you know, all the time, go. And but it's good to have. Plus, it's another form of content that we can produce. You know, content has been key for me. You know, you probably would have never had me on the podcast. You never would have seen me on Instagram, YouTube, or anything like that. And neither would any of those coaches that are on my mentorship. So, I mean, a lot of people have, you know, a lot of old school coaches, and I talk to them a lot of times, and they're very they're apprehensive on like putting out content, putting out free content. Listen, man, like I'm for the people. I told them all the time, I'm for the people. So I'm gonna put out that free content because I know that it's gonna be reciprocated if I do it the right way. And people are going to want to pay for things that are on the higher level. And I want those people. I want those people that truly appreciate what I've been able to give to them for free. And they feel almost not obligated, but they feel like a surge to actually pay for, or be proud to pay for my services. So it was me to get things out there, to have people understand that I know what I'm talking about, that, you know, I have an authority in this particular field of coaching. And putting out quality content so that people can understand how to do this the right way. Because I saw a lot of crazy stuff beforehand, you know, and just being a beacon of hope for those coaches too as well, that could see me and be like, oh man, I could do that too. I can get to that level by showcasing what I can do on a daily basis. And it's not something that, you know, people look at it. And again, I talk about the old school coaches, man. They look at it as like, oh, I'm showing off, or they don't want to put out stuff for free because you have to pay for it. Like, listen, man, if nobody knows who you are, nobody's going to pay for you anyways. So, you know, at the end of the day, you got to, and you know how it is. Like, so the podcast was just another form of content, you know? And again, I love what I'm doing. I wouldn't change it for the world. I think this is my true calling, and we'll keep it going, you know?
Yeah. You talked about, you know, the right way to do content. For you, what's the right way to do content, without talking about, you know, what's maybe good and bad of other people? For you, what's the right way of creating that free content for your community?
Man, well, you got to be authentic for one. You know, I think you don't want to be what's quote unquote a clout chaser. You know, I do believe there's a time and place for things that, like, when things hit, whether it's, you know, the in thing to do or something that's viral, You can put your 2 cents into it, but again, if it goes away from your values and your morals, you know, I don't really pursue it too much. You know what I mean? I try to stay as authentic as possible. Try to stay transparent as possible too, as well. You know, there's been times where like my management or like my agency was like, you know, you should do this, and I'm like, nah, I'm not doing that, man. I'm not going that route, bro. Like, I could have did it. I could have did it just to get more views or whatever. But staying true to your beliefs, staying true to, you know, morality in a sense, and having your values and your virtues meet and align with the content that you're producing, and you feel good about that, then that's how you should do it. And again, people are going to see that. They're going to see either fake or real. You're not. And even if they do, and you don't want those people that want to just see entertainment, you know, a lot of times, like, because then you have to constantly reproduce that. You know, I like to switch it up. I like to be entertaining, but I also like to be influential. I like to be obviously informative. You know, that's the main thing. And if I can keep a steady balance of that, you know, you're going to get a large amount of different types of people that want to watch your content. So again, be informative, be entertaining, because you don't want to be super boring. You don't want to be like sitting in a lecture all day long. And you want to be influential. You want to actually, you know, for me, you know, a lot of people say that I influence them or like I inspire them, and I'm just doing me. So I would do this even if I didn't have a camera in front of my face. And that's where you're being authentic in a sense. So if you are that type of person, you're doing yourself and other people around you a disservice by not putting it out there and allowing yourself to reach the masses, right? You're staying close in your little bubble, but what you've been called to do, you know, and if you are really good at it and you know you have self-understanding, like, okay, this is what I'm good at, this is what I've been called to do, you're doing everyone a disservice by not allowing everybody to feel that pressure, to feel what you want to put out there.
Yeah, no, definitely preaching to the choir here. Do you spend a lot of time when you have those opportunities that show up? Do you spend a lot of time debating over it, or do you usually have a gut feeling that kind of takes you in the right direction then and there?
Yeah, I mean, it is a gut feeling for the most part. There's been times where I'm like, should I do it? And I'm like, there's a way that I have been able to do it where it was a viral title or something like that, but I've been able to put it in my own way to where I feel comfortable putting it out. And those are the videos that really get a lot of views, man. And like, so for instance, like the body weight stuff that we do, you know, and again, I'm not like a calisthenic guy, but I know for a fact that a lot of people couldn't get to the gym because of COVID. So it was easy for me to put out a program because I was helping the people, right? I was helping people that needed. I was putting out videos because when I didn't have weights before, I knew that this did work for me. So it wasn't like I was just coming out, you know, off the top and just throwing this thing together because, you know, that's what it was called to do. I really understood how to do it, and I know that you can get results from it. So I even put together a full program, body armor, for it, you know, and it hit real well. And it was good because it helped people out, which is important. Obviously, that's why we. And so there's times where I'm like debating it, and then I'm like, okay, I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it my own way. And that's when it usually helps.
I want to finish with 3 questions here for you, Phil. I know you have another, you know, more busy hours ahead of you. First one is, I know you like to plan ahead to succeed. Think about the next day, the next week, the next month. Now on the flip side of that, how do you switch off? How do you, you know, get back to yourself and appreciate the moment?
And you listen, I'm not there yet. I'm going to be 100%. And my wife is the one that tells me this all the time. When I can decompress is usually when I leave the situation, right? If I go on a vacation, my wife throws my phone away, or I go, bring your phone or your laptop or anything like that. You know, that's when I can, okay. And now I've been able, getting a little older. I'm about to be 33 in November. And, you know, I got kids now, you know, wife. And I think for me, it's like, all right, I've been able to not solely depend upon electronics and being always in the now and being always readily available for anybody to contact me. You know, it's where I set aside time where, okay, this is when you can ask questions. This is when we can set aside a meeting. And my big partner, Chris, he actually taught me this, and he's a younger dude. But man, he's one of those guys that like you have to set aside meetings to even contact him in most cases because he's doing so much.
Yeah.
But it's okay to not always answer your phone. It's okay to not always answer that text message right back, you know? And so I've been able to get a little bit better with that, you know, but it's still a work in progress. The scheduling does help. Like I have 15-minute time blocks where I schedule everything in, you know, and sometimes lapse. And like when I'm driving and traveling, that does play a role. Like I said, I drive to Tim's house. He lives in Miami. So it's like, I drive about 2 hours to get to his house. And so I can't dictate like, okay, what's the traffic going to be like and things like that. But I can do things while I'm driving, you know, as far as like podcasts or taking phone calls or something like that. But scheduling is very key for me, man. Like, and I do it in multiple different ways, right? I'll have a schedule on a whiteboard that I have that goes over every hour on the hour. I have one on my phone that's like on Calendly. And then I have one just written on a notebook. And I'll look at that every day. So I have 3 forms. I can't miss it. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I'm in constant contact with my assistant, my manager, my agent, and my business partner, stuff like that. So it's a lot going on. But if you can schedule it, I know that it definitely allows me to be less for sure.
I like it. Question for the audience, for the coaches listening, for those who might aspire to, one day work in MMA, strength and conditioning coaches, what would be your biggest piece of advice here?
Well, for the most part, getting with the gym, and training in the gym is definitely going to allow you to fighters more often. If you're looking to train more fighters, it's going to be very hard for you to just, walk into a gym and be like, hey, I want to train some of your fighters. You're probably going to have to join that gym. You're probably going to have to join some classes. You're probably going to have to get beat up a little bit, maybe roll a little bit with some of the guys, take a few sparring lessons, stuff like that. And I'm being 100% transparent here. Like, they will not work with you unless you come with a good background. You have a good name in the industry, or, you train with them. So those are the things that will definitely help you. If not, it's going to be a long road, in a lot of ways. I would tell an individual, utilize the fighters because it's your passion, work with them because they're fun to work with. Listen, let's face it, this sport isn't the most expensive sport. You're not training golfers or tennis players, right? So you're not going to be getting rich off training fighters, for the most part. So I'm going to give you that right now. But what you can do is, you're working with individuals that are very intense, very fun to work with. They're authentic as well, to a degree, unless we're talking about like Connor or something like that. Yeah. Next. And you know what, that will allow you to build your training business. If you're looking in the private sector, it'll allow you to build credentials. It'll allow you to build your name. And to be honest, man, I've been able to work with some high level people, not just athletes, because of the fact that I work with a Dustin Poirier or with a fighter. And even if it's just a fighter, if you work with a UFC fighter, you work with a UFC fighter. It's equivalent to an NFL player in a sense, with a lot of aspects from fans' perspective. So that right there is a good notch on your belt, right? It's good to have on your resume. So utilize that. And I'm being very, it's like real practical knowledge right now. I'm not going to tell you, oh yeah, man, you're going to be rich off, man. No, like you're not, unless you are training Triple G or, Canelo Alvarez or something like that in the boxing world, you may be able to make some money. But at the end of the day, like for the most part, you're going to be training those regional scene guys or those Muay Thai fighters that really have any money that probably not even going to be able to pay you most of the months. And you're just going to have to make sure that you utilize that to your advantage, right? Have fun with it. Make sure that you're training them to the best degree that you can. Get the results that you need, but use it as a means to, again, uplifting your credentials, right?
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah. No, I think it's great advice. I know we have a couple minutes left here. I wanted you to talk a little bit about the conference that you're holding in December, Daru Strong 2021. Is that the first conference you set up, or have you done previous ones already?
Yeah. No, this is the first like big fitness business conference that we're doing. I've done combat sports performance seminars. I'm actually going to be in London in January to do another combat sports seminar, and I'm probably going to have another one for MMA and boxing and combat sports in general next year at my facility. Mm-hmm. But the conference is more, I'm bringing in my friends. I'm bringing in Jordan Shallow. I'm bringing in Bo Hightower. I'm bringing in Joe DeFranco, Kyle Dobbs, Matt Domney. All these guys are coming in, and it was more so to like bring them a little bit of a platform. Plus I get to talk to them and we get to kick it and train. But we're going to be talking more about fitness business on the second day. The first day will be more about coaching, sports performance. I'll talk a little bit about some different things when it comes to communication and auto regulation for combat sport athletes. And then I think, all the other guys are going to talk about both sides. They're going to talk a little bit of sports performance. And then my business partners are also going to go on there and talk about how to brand yourself, how to produce content, how to leverage that content. So it's really good for coaches looking to, especially in the private sector, looking to enhance their business and to make a living out of this thing. So I highly recommend it. We have VIP tickets too as well. The VIP tickets are obviously a little bit more pricier, but we're going to have a watch party because we do believe, hopefully, Dustin signs his contract so we can get the title fight on the day. So December 11th, 12th. So that Saturday, we're going to have a full watch party. And then we'll have obviously a private, meet up, and we'll do like Q&A and stuff like that. So, but all the information is also on my website, darustrong.com. And tickets are still on sale. I think we have only like 2 or 3 VIP tickets left. So we want to get them going. And as far as like coaches that want to learn more of my methods and systems, the mentorship is big. I'm excited about that just because so many coaches have been able to help each other, not including myself, but they've been able to communicate, and that's good. And again, some people, they're from like different walks of life. So it's like, I'm talking to a guy from Italy, I'm talking to a guy from Poland. Sometimes they don't talk great English, but I'm able to do it. But it's cool, and because they're all willing to learn and they're all helping each other. So that's also on my website, darustrong.com, and all my programs and things like that. So yeah, it's good. And if you're in the States and you come through, that, come to Florida because we're the best state in the world right now when it comes to being open.
So, absolutely. That's awesome, man. Thanks so much. So for anybody interested, like you said, your website, Drew Strong Gym, everything's listed in the podcast description. Phil, I want to thank you very, very much for taking a little bit of time to chat with me today on the podcast. It was a pleasure.
Oh, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Have a great rest of your day, my man.
All right, you too, bro.